Hi, everyone. It is Monday morning of March the 5th, and I wanted to make a video which will be a sequel to the two that I made earlier about the innovation memo. If you remember, I addressed issues of the form of the innovation memo and the content of the innovation memo as well. And I think it's really important now, in a relaxed way, to deal with the more general situation of professional writing, because there's a couple of things that a couple of very general things that I want to say about this. First of all, as I have both written and said in the videos, the world of professional writing and the world of a middle-level manager has, first of all, changed so rapidly in the last roughly 15 years. And that change is accelerating to the extent that it's not so easy to present a series of methodologies and guidelines on how to best do that. The other thing is there's tremendous variation between places. But all that admitted, there are a few things that I think undergraduate students in U.S. colleges should think about as they're going through their programs. And I think this, there are some exceptions to what I'm about to say. I mean, certainly. But there's something that sort of I have going for me in my attempt to generalize professional writing today. That is, you're basically all New Yorkers, okay? Where 90% of you are New Yorkers. And the world of New York professionalism is different from DC professionalism, but the kind of professional activities that occur in both those places it has a lot in common. First of all, obviously DC has more government, okay, it has more national government, but with the exception of that, there's so much commonality between the two places, and this is in stark opposition to other places. So let me just kind of plunge into this. Okay, there's 4 points that I want to make, and all these relate to the to writing in general and to the innovation memo in particular, and should help you both now and throughout the class. And as you probably figured out, I don't say things and drop them. I present them, work into them, and always come back to them. Okay, which is which will certainly be the case here. Okay, let me get into this. First of all, once again here, let me do my plug for, as you're doing the COM 210 assignments, please try to take some distance from the general situation of writing for a college teacher. You're writing for a college teacher, that goes without saying. However, we're also doing basically in every assignment, with a few exceptions, we're doing role playing, and that is, you are in the position of a middle-level manager writing for an organization, an entity, or a supervisor. Okay, so that's so, and you want to kind of take some distance, as I was saying, from the traditional situation of writing for an objective or not so objective professor, okay? And keep in mind the following things about professional writing. And these, first of all, they're things that have kind of just transpired in the last decade, number one. And number two, they're interesting. Okay, that's why I'm saying. If they were just neutral changes, frankly, I wouldn't bother. But these are really interesting things. Okay, first of all, sort of traditionally in professional writing, writing for one or two people, and occasionally for more in terms of the supervision. But because of electronic communication, because of globalism, because of the consolidation of smaller companies into huge entities, that doesn't, you might be writing for your personal supervisor who might be in the cubicle next door to you. But you always have to keep in mind that your communication to that person could be forwarded, and not just forwarded to, the cubicle down down the corridor, but it could be forwarded to China, as I would say. It can be forwarded to Shanghai. It can be forwarded to Berlin. It can be forwarded to anywhere for both good and bad reasons, And for me, we're like basically a very ambitious professional person, and someone, as they say in French, qui est fonceur, is always kind of trying to move forward. You want to see that as an opportunity. And when you write your memos and reports for your supervisors, you always want to keep in mind that they can go elsewhere, that the CEO of the company can be reading them. Someone in Beijing can read them. Someone in Delhi or Mumbai can be reading them, and 15 minutes after you send it. So you want to keep that in mind. Okay, so that's the positive part. The negative part, I have to check the time here. The negative part is that the people who are receiving your forwarded messages might not know the context, and it's very likely that they won't know the geography. You could say, well, just let them Google, but yeah, that's the whole point. You don't want them to have to Google. You want them to be able to focus on your main points just by not Googling, frankly. And so thus, one of the reasons for writing really precise and specific documents is because of the possibility that your communication might be forwarded to people who are not familiar with whatever it is you're talking about with the context. And this is, I think that sometimes this is completely to be expected because they're receiving something from a supervisor in a company in Manhattan, we'll say, but the company in Manhattan might have 10 offices in Manhattan, and you need to specify. Now, this is one of the reasons why I keep saying fictionalize, because the thing that I don't want you to do is spend 50 hours researching where all the branches are for some organization in New York. Okay, don't do that. Just fictionalize it. Okay, these are not really truly research papers. And we do some papers in this class that have a research segment to them, but and there we have to research truly. But for just this contextualization, just frankly here, just make it up. Okay, and because it's the form that matters and it's the place that matters. Okay, that's one thing. That there's no longer one supervisor. There's many supervisors at many levels. And here, let me do this one thing. As I've said, and this is one of the things you really profit from my background and experience. I arrived working for the state of Maryland in 2004, and I was some mystery guy from Europe, and they didn't know who I was. They knew why they hired me. My own supervisor knew a lot about me, but other than that, I was like, whatever, a phantom. They soon found out that I had this very, very, very broad expertise in stuff that was going on in Europe, and secondly, I spoke 4 languages, and I could write the 4 languages in varying degrees of excellence. So what happened was the senior people in the whole organization started to rely on me all the time. And so this was, once again, good and bad. It was bad in a sense because they would wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and say, I need some help. It was good, obviously, because what happened, I got promoted a lot of times. Okay. So that's the kind of thing it's a good lesson. Let me put it like that. Okay. So that's one. The second thing is, you have to keep in mind in today's professional correspondence that everything is happening fast, okay? And see, once upon a time, a supervisor might have given a letter, we'll say, to someone in his staff, and they'd look it over kind of calmly. That's not the way it works anymore, because once again, the relationship between supervisors and the admin staff is kind of fluid, and depends on a lot of things. But regardless of who it is, everyone is working fast. Okay, so thus, when you're doing your professional correspondence, one of the main things, if not the main thing, is to always keep in mind that whatever you write is being read at the speed of light. And you just have to not leave any loopholes or any room for questions. Okay, and so this means that your professional correspondence is going to be detailed. Okay, and I mean, you don't want to overdo this, but you always, in terms of dates and times and places, it has to be totally specific. You know, never say for the last 5 months. I mean, this would be like, I mean, I just imagine some of the supervisors that I had. I mean, if I had written over the last 5 months, we have had, I mean, I would get the person pounding on my window, whatever, telling me to, go live in Starbucks or something. Because they would say two things. First of all, I don't have time to look this up. I don't want to look it up. The date should be right there. And the other little lesson that they would say is, listen, everything that we do can end up in court. So make sure that you date and, date everything very precisely. Okay, so everything's going fast. And you don't want to slow up that process. Okay? If there's things so one of the odd consequences is you tend to leave things out. Okay, it seems to be I seem to be contradicting myself, but I'm not at all. That is, you don't necessarily tell the full story, but what you tell is very precise. Okay, but, and this goes back to my, to my next point, you always offer to give follow-up, and you're really, really precise about how to find you. And it's not just an email, not just an email address. It's, when will you be reviewing your emails? And the other thing is always offer to contact them. Okay? And this is in part kind of a ploy, but, you've got to mean it. And so anything that's even slightly complicated, you ask, well, if you would like me to phone you, I would be more than happy to. Tell me when and where. And that's also sort of a ploy, because if you're having issues, which you haven't checked on, if you're having issues, if they know that you're at the end of the telephone, their cell phone, they'll pause, okay, before they blow a fuse. Okay, now there's one more thing that I wanted to mention, and I've been meaning to say this for 2 or 3 weeks, but I've just frankly forgotten. Okay, whenever you're writing someone or communicating with someone, however you're doing it, and there's any bad news, good news, any slight confrontation there, always assume that two things really. That you don't have the full story and your version of it might be wrong. You never want to assume that they're in the wrong, because they might be seeing it from a different one, from a different viewpoint. Number one, they might have completely different information. And secondly, because things are flying around so fast, someone in your organization could have misinformed you. And I can't say this is one of the things that I was always very good at, because I'm not so, egomaniacal about stuff. And I always kind of my nature and my philosophical training to doubt myself and to put myself into question, ask whether I know the full story. The answer is always probably not. Okay, so I was, in terms of typical 21st century administrative situations, I'm very good at putting myself in the shoes of someone else and assuming that they might have a different story. And this is one of the reasons why I was so good at this. Because even though in my heart of hearts, I'm a different kind of person, I can do straight up administrative work very well. I've got many awards and promotions and all that stuff. And as part of it was, I would never lose it, and I was always, always, always good at figuring out that there's another side to the story. And the other thing is, it's not so nice, but I didn't really trust the people who were feeding me stuff. And so, that all together, that worked out to be, a good combination for, someone doing a lot of professional writing and a lot of supervising. So the overall point here in the 10 seconds that I have left is you just have to be very careful. and assume that things are going fast, that you might not have the full story, and that the follow-up conversations are very important. So thanks very much, everyone. I appreciate it.